My current title is Infectious Disease Program Manager. I've been here since 2006. I focus on HIV, STIs, and hepatitis C with various programs from surveillance, prevention, and care. But I also get the chance to talk to people that have just been diagnosed or people that are at risk of contracting because of exposure. So my job in my life became very blurry because my life became my job. I didn't realize it until 3 weeks in, but the job wasn't stopping when I left this office. There wasn't going home and putting down my bag, unlocking the door, and relaxing. Because my wife, my children, we were all prey to this. My mother, who was a new widow at the time, just living here in Vermont, in an assisted living, suddenly she was no longer going to get the tour of Vermont in the welcome wagon. She was in senior living and she was high risk. So there was no longer a personal life because my professional life was my personal life. There is a bit of respite that you get when you can walk away from the work at the end of the day, whenever that day comes, whenever the whistle blows and you decide or work decides that it's done, it's done. With COVID, there was no whistle blowing, and I couldn't escape it. My news feeds, the looking at the news, the listening to the radio, COVID, 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 COVID. And meanwhile, this is the thing that I'm working on at work.
Welcome to Life Became Very Blurry, a podcast from the Vermont Historical Society sharing the experiences of Vermonters during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Amanda Gustin, Director of Collections and Access at the Vermont Historical Society. Over the last 3 years, I've led a team to collect the history of COVID-19 through oral histories, archival material, objects, and more. We know that we're just getting started. But for the 5-year anniversary of the start of lockdowns, we've put together excerpts from oral histories that offer a look back. Work, or the lack of it, became for many a defining feature of the pandemic. While some of us had to figure out how to navigate working from home, others found themselves without employment or income altogether. And some Vermonters discovered, perhaps to their surprise, that they had suddenly become essential. Working during a pandemic. Let's hear more about it.
I had to have paperwork in my car for you're an essential worker. If you get pulled over, show them that you're supposed to be out here. Especially at the early part of it where I'm like, it's weird. I was like, I don't want to be stopped because you're supposed to be home right now. It felt like curfew. And I don't want to use the word prison because I don't know what prison feels like, but it felt so isolated. And it was like, even though I could drive places, I could go get food if I wanted to, it's just I'd have to only get it at the grocery store. Every restaurant was closed. They're like, don't come in here, don't talk to us, don't drive anywhere. And I luckily I was never stopped by the cops for anything, but that was scary. I might have those paperwork somewhere. I'd have to find it, but that changes your perspective on the world sometimes when the roads are for you only. And because you are someone who is deemed essential during this worldwide pandemic.
At the time of COVID, I was a trailer truck driver, and it was beyond interesting to be on the road during the time that the border was closed. The product that I transported was hay and straw to dairy farms and to goat farms, beef operations throughout New York and New England. And that caused me to cross the border 3 times a day. I remember hearing the governor saying that he was going to shut the border down on the radio while we were on our way to Canada. And so I called my boss and I said, well, what are we going to do? And he replied, that doesn't apply to us. We were exempt because we were considered critical, essential workers. And it wasn't just an idea. We actually were essential. And there was such an eerie feeling the first day that the border was shut down and everyone was told to stay home. Because what I saw on the Interstate 89, literally the first day the border was shut down, was tons of out-of-state plates. Like almost the exact opposite thing that you would want to see. Vermonters, for the most part, went home and stayed home and were out of the way. What you saw on the interstate was Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Florida, saw all sorts of foreign plates. And then at each of the rest areas, maybe not all of them, but the majority of them, there was a government vehicle with a laptop opened that seemed to be keeping track of who was coming and going. But to be a truck driver, every day, every day, all we do is fight traffic. And so to have the road cleared was this transformative moment where there was nothing impeding us from reaching our destination. People that have animals at their homes don't always have the carrying capacity on their land to feed those animals. And you can imagine their uncertainty. They knew that all of the hay that we transported was coming from Canada, and they wanted to know whether or not they were going to be able to feed their animals and how they were going to be able to feed their animals. And when we would show up with a trailer truck load of big square bales, they would just start crying because when we showed up, they knew that it was going to be okay. That whatever we were facing, we were going to continue to show up at their house, at their farm, and that they wouldn't have to slaughter or ship their animals, that they could feed them. And you can imagine agricultural people are maybe a bit less outgoing, a bit more likely to be homebodies. And we were this point of contact of delivery where it was the outside world showing up to their house with an entire tractor trailer load full of feed. But that first 4 months, people were just like, oh my God, we need to fill the barn right now, so that because they had uncertainty about availability. My boss, if I might add, made a really interesting choice to not gouge the price. He actually didn't raise the price at all. And that was this piece of integrity that I took forward from that experience. I mean, it was a real opportunity financially. People would have paid whatever they could to get the hay they wanted. But the reality was our service wasn't interrupted. And so and the price at our supply did not go up. And so the price to them did not go up. And that was another thing that shortened the period of scarcity and allowed people, our customers, to relax. The federal government recognized the urgency to get goods and services because of primarily, I believe, all the panic buying that went on at the initial week or two. The grocery stores emptied. And so the federal government, the president, made a decree that said that the local DOT could no longer pull a truck over. That if there was an accident, that what they would do is they would report to the accident, but they were not going to pull the truck over and stop the truck from getting delivered. And when I heard that on the radio, I can't even begin to describe what I felt, because it was like, finally somebody gets it. So there were at that point no more log rules, no more restrictions on mileages, and we could just run as safely as we see fit, which we did. And the feeling of having somebody at the top understand what the person at the bottom is doing was unbelievable. It was a support in a way that we're not, frankly, as a commercial driver, not used to. A lot of our deliveries were out of state. So I picked up in Canada one morning and I headed down to Keene and headed out of Keene. And there were cranes and flashing amber lights ahead of me on the road. And I was like, what's going on? Has there been an accident? And as I got closer, I saw that underneath the cranes were the American flag. And there was a signboard, and the police were present and lined up in New Hampshire. And they were saluting the trucks. They were saluting the trucks. And the signboard said, "Thank you." Which is like, we're always an inconvenience to everybody. People always cut us off. We're always in their way to get to whatever thing they want to do. They don't understand the size of the truck and our ability to stop. And for that moment, the government understood, the police understood, the DOT understood, and the people all understood the value of transporting goods in this country by truck.
My life was really reduced to going from bed to having breakfast to going upstairs for 12 hours and just being on the phone with social services, trying to get, people into safe motel rooms or housing and all these. So these are, again, very fragile individuals. It went beyond just prescribing their medication for their diabetes. It was like everything was in an uproar. And it's an uproar on a good day, and this was not a good time. This was a difficult, as we all know, very difficult time. My husband's a physician. He was downstairs trying to, we were just trying to sort, the hospital DH was trying to sort out that's Dartmouth Health, sort out what the, what telehealth was all about. This was something that everyone had looked at for years, but never really did anything about, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we need to do telehealth like yesterday because of this. So it was a kind of chaotic, stressful. Everyone was stressed. We were stuck in the house together. I think the cats were sick of us. I have 3 cats. The cats were like, can you just please leave? The dogs were very happy. So it was kind of a mixed bag. And the uncertainty was hard. And I spent a lot of time on meetings with the state and also local social safety net agencies. And it became clear very quickly that nobody had a clue what the heck was going on. It was disorganized. It was stressful. People were snapping at each other. These meetings were horrible. And, there's some days where I just thought I was going to lose my mind.
Speaking of positives, for me, I did okay working at home, generally speaking. As an introvert, I think this was a time for all of us introverts. It's not like the work was less. In fact, those first few months, it was very intense in terms of just trying to manage the information, essentially recreate the activities of the department outside the building with everyone's, sort of the department diaspora across Vermont, and just trying to make sure that people were still engaged and felt like they were doing useful work. And I think that unfortunately, because of the nature of what was happening, there was sort of a divide between people who were bored and then people who had an enormous amount of stuff to do. So just trying to talk to people and keep the messaging out there and kind of it was creation of an entirely new culture during that time.
When it started to affect me was when they started shutting down the salons because I'm a hairdresser. And then I was like, wow, this is getting real. It seems so far away, even though it was right here. It didn't feel like it could possibly be where we are right now. It felt like it was across the seas. It couldn't possibly be happening here. And then it was like, oh, wow, okay. So it was interesting. I was watching the news, and Governor Scott was then announcing different things that were being shut down. And what I recall is all of a sudden he was just like, bam, you all have till 8:00. I think it would get Monday, March 23rd to have your place be shut down. And for however long, we weren't sure yet at the time. So that then led into having to call customers, letting them all know and just wait. It was kind of scary because, paycheck to paycheck and you don't know when you're going to be able to go back to work. It was like, okay. So, yeah. Like I said, I have my own salon in town here. And so I also work at a residential facility with elderly people. They house about 40 people and was doing that for many years. And I remember texting at that moment. I actually texted the activities director, and I actually ended up saying hey, the exact words is, I'm not sure if you know this, but know the answer, but do you plan on me coming in for the next couple weeks? And the big answer was no, ! And that was the end. And to tell you the truth, from there, it was almost a year later before I was actually allowed to go back into that salon. So it was the conversation I had asked her at that time, because they were closing down things. The salon wasn't quite closed down yet, because that's when I was just am I allowed to come in there? And that was on March 15th, 2020. And March 11th, 2021 was the day I was able to go back in there. Yeah. So it was quite a full year. And during that year, it was really sad because my sister Paula comes with me, and we really missed them a lot, and they missed us. So we did a lot of Zoom. We did a couple Zoom with them. They were asking if they could have us on the big screen and Zoom so we could chit chat, because they were bored. you know, they were like seeing the same people. They were shut in and, you know, could not leave. So they were like excited to just have a little conversation with us even. So, yeah. And then, you know, you have these little old ladies that would have their hair done weekly, and to not have their hair done for a year, that's a big deal for them. You know, that was their thing. So I remember one of the workers there would call me and say, "Hey, Peg, how do I set this person's hair? How do I do this? We were trying to do it over the phone on how to do their hair just to make them feel special." Yeah. So as far as this, you know, the salon and stuff like that, how it impacted me, you know, like I said, they were closed for we didn't hear anything for 2 months. The hairdressers were all like, when are they going to reopen? Because they were slowly soft opening up certain things. And when are they going to reopen? And finally, 2 months later, we were able to reopen, but it was with very, very strict rules. Actually, it said that hair salons were one of the last to reopen of services and in barbershops, and that we were one of the strictest ones to have guidelines to. So we had a lot of rules that we had to go by, which financially was really, really tough because we had to run things very differently. We had to do by appointment only. No walk-ins were accepted at all. And with that, we were very limited to customers we could have. So I had some hairdresser friends that just got really freaked out to reopen because I could only, for instance, for the amount of space I have, you could only have one customer per 200 square feet. So that really limits your time. And so money-wise, that was really tough. You had to have logs of contact tracing. You had to hold on to that. So if you came in, had your hair done, I'd have to have your phone number, all your contact information. I had to keep that for a month just in case somebody came in with COVID. I'd have to be able to do a back trace of where it may have come from. Because if you recall, if you had COVID, we had to get hold of the state, right, and let them know that we had that. So there was a lot of rules behind reopening. Some hairdressers just didn't reopen. They got scared and said that they couldn't handle the pressure of all the rules that we had to have. So, and cleaning, you know, there was a shortage of cleaning supplies. There was a shortage of the barbicide, the hand sanitizer. You know, if somebody, the masks were huge. Doing hair while people were wearing masks, that was a huge big deal. So that was, you know, as far as my job went, that was I was even scared. I mean, I've been doing hair for over 30 years and I was like, do I want to do this? Because can I handle the pressure of all the rules, you know? But, you know, we made it through it. Our rules were one of the last ones to be lifted. Rightfully so. I mean, we're right there in their face, you know, like dentists practically sitting there, you know. But yeah, it was. And I still have people that do come in with masks, but not many, you know. But even, you know, how many years later, you know, people are very good about, they'll call me and they'll say, you know, I have a cough. I took a test. I'm negative. How do you feel about that? You know, so people are, at least, you know, my clients, they're very still respectful about not spreading it, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've been listening to Dan Daltrey, Luke Young, Eric Rossier, Natalie Hebert, Tom McMurdo, and Peggy Dunphy. The Life Became Very Blurry podcast is produced by me, Amanda Gustin, of the Vermont Historical Society, and Mary Wesley, Andy Kolovos, and Will Hamilton of Vermont Folklife. Oliver Perdue mixed this episode. Our theme music is the track Never Mind the Forecast from Burlington-based artist Expected Guest. Find more from Expected Guest on bandcamp.com. The interviews heard in the program were created as part of the Vermont Historical Society's Collecting COVID-19, A Vermont Story, an oral history project, and were conducted by me, Marcia Bosek, Mark Johnson, and Amber Wingerson. We had additional project support by Teresa Green and Tessa Brimblecombe. Funding for this work was provided by a grant from IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services.